The story started unexpectedly for me. My name is Zephyr, and I'm 25 years old. I recently returned home after spending a long time living and working abroad. I left at the age of 22 to pursue a career in a faraway location, and during those 3 years, I could only communicate with my family through phone calls. However, I decided to return to my hometown to see my family after so many days away. When I entered the familiar house, a sense of both familiarity and strangeness returned. My parents were overjoyed to see me again, and the entire family spent the first evening laughing and reminiscing about old memories and the dishes my mother prepared that I missed so much. But Maris, my younger sister, surprised me the most. Maris was still a small, lovely, but shy girl who preferred to hide behind me whenever she met strangers, but when she came out of the room to greet me, I couldn't believe my eyes. She was now a mature woman, tall and confident. Her long hair was loose, her eyes sparkled, and her smile was shy yet warm. It was a strange sensation, like meeting someone completely new, but also familiar. "Zephyr, it has been a long time since I last saw you." Maris smiled, her voice full of maturity that I hadn't expected. I pulled her into a tight hug. "When did you get so big?" I joked that I no longer recognized you. Maris simply chuckled, her cheeks flushed, and said nothing else. I couldn't stop staring at her throughout the evening. Every move Maris made brought back old memories, but I also realized how much she had changed. Something about the way she spoke and laughed confused me. It was a mix of familiarity and something new, elusive. When night fell, I went to my room to rest after a long flight. My mother still kept my old room, and every detail made me nostalgic. Tired, I decided to take a shower before retiring to bed. The warm water in the shower seemed to wash away all of my fatigue from the long trip, leaving me feeling relieved and relaxed. After taking a shower, I put on a loose t-shirt and lay down on the old bed, intending to nap, but when the lights went out, the darkness and silence caused my mind to wander. Images of my family from the past, particularly Maris, kept appearing in my mind. I couldn't help but think about her, how she'd changed, and the gentle yet sharp look she'd given me. I tried to dismiss those thoughts, telling myself that it was just a strange feeling to see my sister after so many years apart. But the more I tried to forget, the clearer her image became in my mind. I remembered Maris' shy smile, and the way she tilted her head slightly while listening to her parents talk. Every gesture and small expression seemed to be imprinted in my mind. Lying on the bed, I realized I was struggling with my own emotions, but in the end, I let go, leaving only a gentle feeling mixed with embarrassment and turmoil in my heart. Lying in the dark, I noticed that everything around me was so quiet that I could hear my own breathing, but my mind was not at ease. I couldn't stop thinking about Maris and how she had changed so much in 3 years that I felt like I was meeting a completely different person. Old memories of her kept coming back. When we were kids, she would follow me around, calling, "Brother Zephyr, wait for me." I remembered how she used to hide behind me when she was scared, or how she would jump up and down with joy when I brought her small gifts. But Maris was no longer that little girl. The way she smiled, the look in her eyes, everything exuded confidence and charm that I was unfamiliar with. I exhaled softly. I tried closing my eyes to lull myself to sleep, but a soft knock on the door woke me. "Are you still awake? Hey, are you still awake?" Maris' voice came softly from outside the door. I sat up slightly surprised. "You are awake. What's up, Maris?" The door opened, and Maris walked in, still wearing the simple nightgown that accentuated her slim figure. She smiled shyly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I can't sleep," she said, her hands clasped together, her eyes avoiding mine as if she was thinking about something. "I just want to talk to you for a bit. It's been a while since we've seen each other." I nodded, trying to keep my voice casual. "Yeah, it's been a while. So what did you want to tell me?" We started talking first about simple stories about family, work, and each other's lives. Maris told me about the days she spent at home with her parents, about her studies, and about the little joy she had experienced. But the more we talked, the more I realized that her eyes sometimes seemed to be vague, as if there was something she didn't dare to say. Suddenly, she stopped, her hands clenched, tighter. "Do you think when two people live apart for so long, they might change so much that they no longer understand each other like before?" Her question made me pause. I looked at her, tried to read her eyes. I think so, but if there's still a connection between them, things will go back to the way they were. I replied. Maris smiled slightly, but it wasn't a completely happy smile. I hope so. We sat there in the dim light. The air suddenly changed. I could feel her presence, the warmth of her soft breathing as she sat nearby, but there was an awkwardness that I couldn't explain. Maris, what is wrong? Is anything bothering you? I asked softly, attempting to keep my voice calm. She did not respond right away, just shook her head slightly. It's nothing, honey. I suppose I'm just thinking too much. She stood up and smiled at me again. Okay, I'm heading back to my room. I will not bother you anymore. Good night, brother. Good night, Maris. I replied, but my mind remained full of unanswered questions. When she walked out and closed the door, I sat there for a moment, staring into the dark space in front of me. A strange feeling rose in my heart, both familiar and awkward, as if something had changed between us, but I didn't dare to confront it. I lay back on the bed but couldn't fall asleep. My thoughts kept returning to Maris' image, her half-closed eyes and quiet voice. As she left, she looked at me in an unusual way, as if she wanted to say something but didn't dare. Time passed slowly. The silence accentuated the uneasy feeling in my heart. Finally, unable to bear the suffocation, I went to the kitchen for a drink in the hopes of improving my mood. As I walked down the stairs, the dim light from the living room prompted me to stop. I looked through the half-open door and saw Maris sitting on the sofa, her legs drawn up, her arms hugging a pillow, her gaze fixed on the TV screen. But her mind was clearly absent. I walked in softly to avoid startling her. Are you still awake? Maris jumped a little, then turned to look at me, her face slightly embarrassed. I couldn't sleep, so I came down here to watch TV for a bit. I sat down next to her, keeping a comfortable distance. What's wrong? You've been restless since I got home. She pursed her lips, her eyes looking down at her clenched hands. After a moment, she shook her head. It's nothing, honey. I guess it's just strange because it's been so long since you've been home. I didn't force her, but the atmosphere between us was still strangely tense. I looked at Maris, recognizing the mature features on her face, but at the same time, I saw something fragile, as if she were hiding a secret that she didn't want or couldn't tell. You know, I said, trying to lighten the mood, when I first came back, I felt strange too. You've changed so much. It was like I was meeting a completely new person. Maris turned to look at me, her eyes flashing with surprise. Is change good or bad, brother? I smiled, trying to keep my voice light. That's good, you're grown up, more mature, and really beautiful. Maris blushed at those words, and she quickly turned away, but she couldn't hide the smile that flickered across her lips. Thank you, she whispered, her voice so soft I had to strain to hear it. There was a long silence, broken only by the faint hum of the TV. Then Maris spoke softly, breaking the silence. Mr. Zephyr, I have a question, but I'm afraid you'll find it strange. I raised an eyebrow at her, asking, I promise I'll answer seriously. Maris bit her lip as if considering something, and then she let out a long breath. Is it wrong if two people were once very close, and then one of them suddenly has a different opinion about the other? Her question was like a needle, piercing the emotions I had been attempting to avoid since I first saw her. Again, I didn't know how to respond, but I could feel her eyes waiting for an explanation. I believe that our feelings are never wrong. Maris, I replied slowly, trying to keep my voice calm, but how you respond to them is what matters. Do you understand what I mean? Maris nodded slightly, but did not say anything else. She returned her gaze to the television screen, seemingly lost in thought. I didn't press her because she didn't say anything else, but I couldn't stop my heart from racing, with each beat pounding in my chest. Part of me wanted to leave to get away from this awkward situation, but another part of me couldn't stop looking at her. Finally, I stood up and tried to keep my voice natural. Okay, I think I should go to bed. Don't stay up too late. We'll have plenty of time to talk tomorrow. Maris gave me a slight nod. Good night, brother. Good night, T. Maris, I replied, but as I left the living room, I couldn't help but feel that the peace between us was gradually being replaced by something that neither of us dared to name. I returned to my room, closing the door gently as if afraid to break the silence of the house. But the silence only made my mind more chaotic. Maris's question kept echoing in my head, spinning like a spiral with no way out. If two people were once very close to each other, and then suddenly one person feels differently about the other, is that wrong? That question, the way she looked at me, all of it was like an unspoken confession, but it was enough to make me feel anxious and uneasy. I couldn't deny that since I saw Maris again, I had felt the same way. Turmoil that I didn't want to admit, didn't even want to think about, but now her question made those feelings suddenly unavoidable. I lay on the bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, trying to push away the tangled thoughts, but Maris's image kept appearing clearly in my mind. Her smile, her eyes, the way she sat next to me on the sofa, looking confused but also full of anticipation. I tossed and turned for a long time until the feeling became unbearable. I decided to get up and step out onto the balcony to breathe some fresh air. The street lights cast a shadow on the quiet night, and the star-filled sky brought a bit of peace, though not enough to dispel the chaos in my heart. As I stood there, I heard a slight noise coming from the stairs. Turning, I saw Maris standing there, her eyes fixed on me, uncertainly. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly, stepping closer. "I saw your door open, so I figured you might too." I nodded, trying to keep it casual. "I just came out here to get some air. Are you okay?" Maris Mara stood next to me, her hands lightly gripping the railing, her eyes looking up. "It's fine up in the sky. Why? It just feels strange to see you again. There are so many emotions that I'm not sure how to handle." I listened silently, unsure what to say. There was something about her voice that made it impossible for me to interrupt Zephyr. Maris continued, her voice soft but slightly trembling. "Do you ever feel like the people closest to you can confuse you the most?" The question was like a knife to the deepest emotions inside me. I turned to look at her, her eyes waiting as if searching for something inside me. "Maris," I began, not sure what to say. "I think sometimes our feelings don't go the way we want them to. What matters is how we deal with them. Do you know what I mean?" Maris nodded, her eyes still glued to me. But this time there was something different, a closeness and conflict that I couldn't describe. She stood very close to me, her soft breath blowing into the air between us, shortening the already fragile distance. I felt my heart pounding, each beat echoing in my chest. Part of me wanted to step back, but another part of me couldn't take my eyes off her. "Maris." I called her name softly, my voice choked by my emotions. But before I could say anything more, she stepped closer until the distance between us was almost gone. I felt her warmth, fragility, and strength intertwined, but at that moment, like a shock pulling me out of my confusion, I took a step back, trying to hold on to what little reason I had left. "Maris, we can't," I said, my voice trembling, not daring to look directly at her. "You are my sister. This isn't right." She looked at me, her eyes filled with emotions that I couldn't read, but she didn't say anything, just nodded slightly, then turned away, walking back into the house without a word. I stood there watching her figure disappear, my heart filled with a feeling of insecurity and confusion. Then I went back to my room and lay down on the bed, but sleep was far away. The tense feelings wouldn't let me escape. Every moment of intimacy between Maris and me since I returned kept appearing, leaving no detail behind. Her shy smile when she first saw me, her meaningful questions, the way she approached me on the balcony, everything seemed to be leading to something I didn't want to admit. The next morning I woke up when the first sunlight of the day filtered through the door. My body was heavy from a night of almost no sleep, but there was no time to think too much because the smell of steaming coffee from the kitchen reminded me that everyone had started a new day. As I walked down the stairs, I saw Maris standing by the essential oil maker making coffee. She was wearing a loose t-shirt and jeans, looking comfortable but no less lovely when she saw me. Maris turned around, giving me a gentle smile, but I immediately recognized the calm in her eyes. "Good morning, brother," she said, her voice trying to keep it natural. "I made coffee. Would you like a cup?" "Yes, thank you," I replied, trying not to show my admiration. I sat down at the table, watching her put the coffee powder into the ring, her fingers running lightly a gesture that I expected only I could notice. We sat across from each other, the atmosphere quiet but filled with unspoken things. I knew she wanted to say something, and I also wanted to break this silence. But every time I opened my mouth, I couldn't find a reasonable explanation. In the end, Maris was the one who spoke first. "Mr. Zephyr, I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable last night. I didn't mean to cause any trouble." I looked at her silently, seeing the sincerity in her eyes, but also the sadness she was trying to hide. "It's okay, Maris. It's just I didn't know what to say either. Everything was so unexpected." She nodded, putting down the coffee powder in front of her. "I understand. Maybe I'm confused about myself too, that I didn't know how to respond." Her words were an admission that I wasn't ready to face, but I couldn't hide forever. I couldn't let her feel alone in her uniqueness. "Morris, listen," I began, my voice low. "We're brothers. Time and change may make things strange, but I believe this will pass. As long as we maintain mutual respect, it will all work out." Maris looked at me gently. Her eyes seemed to want to say something, but she stopped. After a while, she nodded slightly. "You're correct. Perhaps I'm just thinking too much." Maris avoided me for the rest of the day. Following breakfast, she did the majority of the housework, including cleaning and rearranging the living room. I didn't approach her either, thinking that we both needed time to sort out our feelings, but the distance didn't help. It only made me more nervous in the evening when my parents announced that they were going to see a friend and would be back for the night. I sensed the situation becoming more complicated. Now it was just Maris and me in the house. I had planned to go up to my room early to avoid awkward situations, but then I heard a gentle knock on the door. I called Maris and opened the door to see her standing there, her thin face cool and focused on a project. "Can you come out and speak with me for a moment?" she asked softly, almost in a plea. I wanted to refuse, but my eyes made that impossible. I nodded and stepped outside. We went down to the living room, which was filled with soft golden light. Maris sat on the sofa, and I sat a safe distance away. "I just wanted to explain," Mara said, her voice trembling. "I do not want you to think I am a stranger, or that I'm attempting to do something wrong. I simply cannot control my emotions." When I heard those words, my heart fluttered. I wanted to interrupt her, but I wasn't sure what to say. Zephyr Maris kept turning to look at me. "I know what I'm feeling is wrong, but I'm not sure how to stop it." Her words cut deep into my heart, but they also brought to light something I had been trying to keep hidden. I wanted to comfort her, to assure her that everything would be fine. But how could I when I wasn't certain? I looked at her, ready to say something, but she stood up and turned back to me. "I should not have thought about this. I apologize." Having said that, she quickly walked out, leaving me sitting there again, filled with mixed feelings. I sat silently in the living room, the soft yellow light failing to warm the cold that surrounded my heart. Maris' words, the emotion she expressed, and my own helplessness were all building up like a cork about to burst. I could not help but blame myself. How could I have allowed this to happen? A part of me wanted to walk out of the house, away from everything, so that I wouldn't have to face her eyes or what I was feeling, but another part held me back, preventing me from leaving. I didn't want to leave her in this state. I didn't want her to feel lonely or rejected. I got up and walked slowly up the stairs, stopping in front of a room door. The door was only slightly open, and the light from a room's table lamp shone dimly but warmly into the hallway. I knocked softly, so quietly that only I could hear it. "Maris, can I come in?" There was no response. I opened the door to find Maris sitting on the edge of the bed, head bowed and hands clasped in her lap. She did not look up at me, but I could tell she was aware of my presence. "Maris," I said, moving to sit next to her on the bed, "I don't know what to say to make you feel better, but I'm here, and I want you to know that you don't have to suffer alone." Maris turned to look at me, her eyes filled with tears, but no tears fell. "Zephyr, I know I'm wrong, but I can't stop this feeling. I've tried, but every time I see you, I just can't. Stop thinking about you." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I knew there was nothing I could say that would ease the turmoil inside her, or even inside me, but I had to do something. say something to keep us from sinking deeper into the uncontrollable emotions we felt. "Maris, you're my sister," I said, my voice slow but steady. "These feelings may be the result of being apart for so long, making things unfamiliar, but it's important that we remember who we are and the role we play in each other's lives." Maris was silent, just looking at me, her eyes filled with pain, and also searching for a bit of hope. "You're right, but I don't know how to forget this feeling. Zephyr, I just want things to go back to the way they were when I was simply your little sister, and you were the big brother I've always admired." I placed my hand on her shoulder, a gentle but reassuring touch. "I want that too, Maris, and I believe that time will help you get through it. I will be here helping you find what we once had, brotherly love and closeness, but not crossing the line that we both know cannot be crossed." Maris nodded, leaning her head lightly on my shoulder as if seeking some comfort in that moment. We sat like that for a long time, neither of us saying anything, just quietly letting the space around us blend into the silence we both needed to calm down. Then I stood up, giving her a gentle smile. "Go to sleep, Maris. Tomorrow is a new day. I believe we will be fine." Maris smiled slightly, a sad smile, but also a little relieved. "Good night, Mr. Zephyr." "Thank you." I left her room, closed the door, and felt like I had crossed a thin but necessary line. Everything was still chaotic inside me, but I knew that I had made the right choice to hold on to what was right despite the difficult emotions. That night, I lay in bed feeling lighter for the first time in days of struggle. I knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but at least we had begun to take the first steps towards healing for her and for myself. From this story, I learned a profound lesson that emotions are a natural part of being human, but how we face and handle them determines everything. Sometimes we can get caught up in conflicting emotions, especially when unexpected changes upset familiar perceptions. But the important thing is to stop, look at the problem clearly, and choose the right path. I have learned that love is not just a simple feeling, but also a responsibility to others and to yourself. Protecting necessary boundaries, even when it is difficult, is the only way to take care of the respect and relationships you cherish in life. Sometimes you will face strong and complicated emotions, even confusing ones, about yourself and the relationships around you. When that happens, remember that emotions are natural, but action should be guided by wisdom and moral values. Take time to understand your emotions instead of judging or acting on them, and respect important boundaries in relationships because they are the foundation for maintaining attachment and trust. If you feel lost, turn to trusted family members, friends, or listen to your heart, but always keep your heart in mind. Self-control not only protects you from mistakes, but also preserves the precious relationships you cherish. My story ends here with unforgettable lessons and a sense of relief that everything has been properly seen and handled. Life continues, and I believe that with sincerity and respect we will maintain this sacred family relationship. Thank you for listening to our story. If you find it interesting and meaningful, don't forget to leave a like to support it. See you in the next videos. Wish everyone always happy and healthy.